Good afternoon, everybody, at least, or good evening, depends where you are in the world. My name is Angela, I'm Italian. I'm a macrobiotic vegan cook since many, many years. I think I have about 40 years of experience. And today I'm going to cook with you a spring meal, trying to explain to you my way to how I balance yin and yang in my meals. Yin and yang for us of the West is not such a simple thing to understand, because we really try always to understand with our mind. And I was lucky enough to study many, many years ago when I just started macrobiotic with Herman and Cornelia Ihara. I lived and practiced with them about 2 years. So being in contact with them, watching them, seeing their mentality, I could see that people from the East, they have it inside them. They don't need to think so much about yin and yang. So it's a very different way to approach it. I don't say that we have to change. We can't change our way, but we have really tried to go away. So once we know about the difference between yin and yang, just not to try to grab it. My teacher Herman was saying that yin and yang is like a heel. The more
a slippery heel.
A slippery heel. The more you try to grab it, the more it's slipping away. Is going away from you. So don't try too much with your head. Saying that, I can tell you about my experience, about what I know about it. I'm not a teacher, but I practice yin and yang every day in my cooking. So what my way, of course, now after so many years, it comes intuitively, but otherwise it's very good to observe nature. Nature is telling us everything. And now, for example, in springtime, after the very still winter, when everything was sleeping, everything was still, nature starts to move, the energy the rising energy is there. We see in the buds, we see in the new plant, new flower. So we have to go along with the nature if we want to be in balance with our environment. So we need to move this energy inside us, the yin energy that slowly comes up, still slowly. It's not yet summer, it's not exploded, it's still coming up, and we want to help it, even with our food. So the food that are there now is most of all the greens. Greens is really a very nice energy that we can put in our body. That's why today I chose to make a barley with greens like asparagus and peas, some spring onion. You can choose also some fresh spinach or other vegetables you have. We are going to make some spring cabbage. Actually, I found some spring greens, which is quite similar to the spring cabbage. Spring cabbage is a cabbage very pointed, very similar to that. We're going to do some radishes and pickle them, or lightly pickle them, and we're going to make some tempeh. So not everything now has to be yin in our food, because we still have the yin and yang is everywhere. We have to keep a balance depending who we are, what we want to achieve, which season we are in, so what we want to achieve. So we still, of course, we are giving more space to the light, the soft yin energy, but we still have to keep the other energy, the yang energy in there. And it can be not necessarily with the food that we use, even with the style of cooking. For example, we are going to roast some seeds. Roasting is quite a yang way to cook. So yin and yang can be balanced not only with the food we use, but also with the way we cook. So let's start with our radishes. Radishes, which are, of course, I already prepared myself a little, otherwise it's not possible to finish in 45 minutes. So these are the radishes. I bought them 2 days ago in a farm where we go, and the greens were so nice that I didn't want to leave them on. I just cut them away and blanched it. This is the yin, the most yin part of the radishes are these greens, which you can use if you are lucky enough to find the greens. And then there is our radish, and then there is the root. The root is the most yang part of that. And if it's not so fibrous, if it's still nice and tender, you can cut it away, wash it well, and keep it for your miso soup. This is a very young, dense food from a quite Also is a radish, quite a lean root vegetables. So we just cut it. I just showed 2 of them because the other I already did. And then we put it together to the other one that I did. And we're going to put a little bit of salt. This is practically the way you make pickles. Of course, this is not pickles, has to be fermented at least 3 weeks. We all know that to develop completely all the enzymes, but we can do also some light pickles, a little bit more light. So we put some radishes and a little bit of umeboshi seasoning. Gives a nice red color. And
you see that bottle again, Angela?
Yeah, you know, now I live in Scotland. It's not easy for me to find everything, and especially now the many shops are closed, so I have to get things online or in a nice farm shop that is here not so far away from us. So you just mix it.
And if we can't find the ume vinegar?
You can just do only with salt. I know that for some people it's not easy. Just do with salt, increase a little bit the salt. The radishes also is a root. They are quite watery, so they don't need so much pressing, so much salt to take out their water. That's why I chose them. So we put a weight on it, just a lid, and then
this is a saucer, right?
A saucer, yeah. And then we put some. I have my jug of filtered water, anything that you find that is quite heavy. And we can leave it here for about 30 minutes. Of course, it can be also 2 hours, it can be 1 day. After you take out the one you need, you can leave the other to pickle so that you have it keep on fermenting and you have more fermented pickles. So now we go on the barley. And the barley, I have already some, I cooked them already some because otherwise there is no time, but I like to show to you that you soak it. I like to soak, even if it's pear barley, I like to soak this grain, maybe for 2 hours, like I wrote in the recipe. And then, sorry.
Yeah, so this weight here on the radishes, of course, it's a yang pressure there. And initially, this is a raw food which has been slightly pickled. So that's the freshness that you're going to get there in your meal in the springtime.
Yeah, it's not yet time to a lot of raw, but we like I told you before, we have to give a little bit of this energy. And also we don't want, we have a lot of salads, we can press our vegetables. The way I'm pressing the radishes, you can do with other, like you can make some cabbage, some bok choy, some celery, what you find now. And in the same way, you can make a press salad. So you have some crunchy lean vegetables, the water goes away. It's not bad, this water, you can still use for a soup, but you don't have so much expanded energy inside. So the barley is rinsed. Now I already prepared the 3 times water in my little pot. I'm cooking a smaller amount of what I wrote on the recipe, the half. Bring to a boil, and then we put a little bit of salt, a pinch of salt, and we boil we simmer for about 40, 45 minutes, 40 minutes. It depends on the barley, depends on, so about at least 40 minutes, I like to do it. The water will be completely absorbed. So I usually start with my grain when I plan my meal. The grains are pretty much, the cereal grains are pretty much in the middle. They are not too lean, they are not too young. And is a food that is good the whole year. There are some grains that are more suitable for the winter, some other for the summer, of course, you know that. But in general, all grains are in the middle. Why? They have, most of them, they have this ratio 7:1, potassium, sodium. They have, and you can see this ratio in many other elements of the grain. You can see 7 fats, the carbohydrates, and 1 protein, for example. Maybe Ken can mention some other ratio. So it's quite a balanced food. So you start from your grain, and from there you go and plan the rest of the meal. Another thing, I told you before that is very good for me to watch the nature. And now It's the springtime. And if you watch the nature, if you use the foods that are there, if you feel how you should, for example, if you feel too hot, if you feel too cold, you can adapt to yourself. Sorry, I just lost myself. I wanted to say something. Okay, I'm back. This is the springtime, so we watch this season, springtime. By going along with the nature in the choice of your foods, you automatically cook also according to the 5 elements. I don't know if all of you know the 5 elements. Is macrobiotic philosophy is really a lot based on that. And this season, in springtime, is in the wood element. It doesn't mean that we have to cook everything in the wood element, but we can privilege these foods, and then we can use the other elements in smaller amount to charge the wood element. For example, the greens are in the wood element, the barley is in the wood element, but for example, the tempeh is in the metal, which is will nourish the water element, which will nourish the wood element, etc. So if we variate our cooking, our foods, our method to cook, and we are cook according to the season, automatically we will have it. A balance with yin and yang, a balance with the elements. So we bring this to a boil. Now we wait a little bit, and then put a pinch of salt. I will cover and simmer on a low flame on the smaller one for 40 minutes. Now, meanwhile, since I have already my cooked barley, which I cooked exactly the same way, you see I can fluff it up. Everything is gone. It's not sticking on the bottom. Also, it's a small amount. I know that at home the problem is always cooking small amounts. If you use the right pot, if you are careful with your fire or with your heat, it should be okay. It doesn't burn so easily. Another thing, yin and yang in your food is not only the food that you choose, the method of cooking is also your attitude. You can change so much the energy of the food because the food is alive, is absorbing also your energy. So you really have to try to get in contact with you, to speak to your food, to be really in the present in the moment, and automatically, yeah, it will respond to you. So you can still be quick, but still gentle to the food. If you are too active, too young, if you are angry, if you think about something else, your food will get this young energy, and no matter what you're cooking, the person that is going to eat it or yourself is going to absorb this energy. So, I'm boiling. Put on a smaller flame. We put a little bit of sea salt. You don't want to use a lot of salt in springtime or in summer, like you do in winter, but still you want to use some salt, especially in cooking the grains, which are acid forming, and the salt and the minerals of the sea salt are balancing it. Okay, so we start to do our barley, and then we do the tempeh. Of course, at the end of the cooking class, you will see also this one. We put the casserole on the fire. I know I wrote a recipe, and of course I'm not cooking according. I'm using everything I wrote in the recipe, but sometimes I'm very spontaneous, so I might do something not exactly like in the recipe. So I'm sorry about that. So we put a little bit of oil. I'm using extra virgin olive oil. You can use also some sunflower oil. Depends where you live, what you find. Then we start with our spring onion. So I already cut one. This is washed. I'm going to cut one with you. I saw by reading again my recipe that I made a little mistake. I wrote at one point, add the tips of the asparagus. And then I wrote again, add the tips. The first time is not the tips. but it's the stem, cut stem. Sorry about that. I realized too late. Okay. So this is the oil. Make your oil a little bit warm, of course, not overheated. And I like to add a pinch of salt every time I saute vegetables. It's better to use a small amount of salt in cooking than almost no salt at all, and then add it at the end. In the end, you need more salt, and it's not good. So just a little bit so that the food is absorbing it, and in the end, you use less. We want to keep things quite green, still a little bit crunchy, but tender. So I don't want to overcook my vegetables. This is the asparagus, which I already peeled, cut away I will cut away actually the harder part. And I'm going to cut the stem. You have to peel it because the skin can be quite hard. At least the skin on the bottom. And these tips are a little bit big, so I cut them in half. And I add them to the spring onion. It's a very easy dish.
So these are the stems going in now,
Yeah.
right?
You can do also with another grain like quinoa or rice. And you can have your grain already cooked the day before. So if you have that already cooked, it's quite quick to make. If your pot gets too hot, just add 1 tablespoon of water. I'm not using a lot of oil. Also, in this season, we don't want so much oil. We don't want to warm up our body so much because the winter is away. Now we don't need so much warm inside. So you can use some oil and a little bit of water. I have my filter water. I have a filter attached to my thing. And that, as I told you, is not only the food that makes the yin and yang, but also a way to cook. So a lighter way, like blanching the vegetable instead of roasting, is a type of cooking we want to privilege in this season. Or if we want more yin, or if we want to yinize the rest of the meal. For example, people like to bake some tofu, some tempeh, or some fish if somebody is not vegan, and then wants to eat together what something more yin to balance. So it can be in summer raw vegetable, or in springtime some blanched vegetable or pressed vegetable. So you can balance. Only think, how did I cook that? How do I balance it? And little by little will come quite spontaneous. I can cook a little bit, depends how hard they are. Last year, we had enough peas, so I froze some of my peas. And so now I took them out and just blanched them. You can use peas if you live in a place where you're in season, or you can use some organic frozen peas. So I blanched them, and I kept a little bit of the blanch in water. Otherwise, it's okay, some broth. So we want to add now the peas. Just not anymore this long cooking, this sauteing, this just gently lighter cooking. This is a more yin way to cook. At high flame, not long. So if you want to do quick, you have to keep more the flame high and put a little bit of water. Now a few seconds, maybe 30 seconds.
How many seconds?
30 seconds, depends also how hard are the peas, if they are just blanched or they are soft. You just want to keep them still green. We don't want these brownish colors that we have in winter, which are more young, more dense. We want something bright. So try to keep your colors bright, especially the greens.
That's looking very vivid green.
Okay. The barley tends to make a lot of, usually cook your barley in a bigger pot, in a big pot compared in proportion to the amount of your barley, because even if the flame is very low, it tends to make some foam and then it's boiling over. So now it's okay, at least at the beginning. Maybe the first few minutes you can keep your lid like this and then close it. Okay. So what do? We jump from one thing to another so that we will have our meal ready. I already cut my greens, at least some of them. I wash them. You can cut them. These are quite tender, so if they are tender, don't cut them too small, especially if you're blanching them. The water is already on. And now back to our, you can see, okay, back to our barley. Let's add the tips of the asparagus, which are very tender, they cook very quick, that's why I add them at the end. You could have, for example, later there will be some courgettes instead of the peas, or peas and courgettes instead of the asparagus. Like I said before, can be spinaches, can be some green beans, can change.
So Angela, what kind of greens do you have there?
The greens, this is spring greens. It's very similar to spring cabbage. I show to you. These are quite common here where I live. And there's some, it's a kind of cabbage, but the leaves are quite fluff, light, and it's very tender compared to, it's the family of the cabbage, but it grows all in this season, in the warmer season, in spring. So let's add 1 second of water, pinch of salt, a few seconds, and then we can add our barley. Okay, let's leave the barley. I will add the barley and leave it there, and then the pesto will make almost at the end, maybe in 10 minutes, and then we can mix it in. Otherwise, I have to keep it closed, and the green of the pesto becomes quite dark. Good. Now we'll just a second. I want to finish this, and then we go on to our tempeh.
So it's just initially waiting for those
Yes,
asparagus
but
tips
I can
to
start
be
to-
tender.
I can start to prepare the pan for the tempeh. So the tempeh can make our own tempeh, especially now that we can find almost anything. And I still had the piece frozen.
Wow.
I took it out. Usually I don't have frozen, I don't freeze it, but it prepares a big amount, and then we have to freeze. Tempeh is one of the protein food that you can freeze quite well, especially either if you buy in a big amount or if you make it yourself. Of course, you can't eat all at once, and you can't just make a small amount at a time. And here I don't have shops where I can buy. Usually it comes from London or can mix it. So I have the tempeh cut in slices, and the mixture that I wrote on the recipe. So soy sauce.
How thick are those slices?
About a little bit less than 1 centimeter.
Okay.
With soy sauce, or tamari if you are gluten-free, some rice vinegar, some umeboshi vinegar, a little bit of rice syrup or maple syrup, and the ginger juice I will put at the end. Now, let's finish the barley. This is ready. We have our barley. If the barley is cold because you made it long before, then you put it on top just before everything is completely cooked. Just put it on top and cover. The warmth, the steam is still making it hot and fluffy, and then you can mix it up. Don't try to mix it when it's cold, because then you have to really stir your food too much and disturb it. Just do this like this. Mine is quite warm, so I don't need to keep it long time. Here the water is boiling. I like to blanch with a little bit of salt. Again, you can even blanch without, and then add a little sauce like the tahini, soy sauce on top. So it depends which sauce you have. You put more or less salt, or you can let them plain. I like them also plain. So you see, the barley now is fluffy. Just mix it in well. And later we are going to finish this dish. Now we add, like I wrote on the recipe, the zest.
What's that going in there now?
Lemon zest. Again, lemon is in the good element, is sour. Everything is sour. It's very good to stimulate our liver, which is also in the good element. So it's in the season. This season is the best season to take care of our liver. And so everything like umeboshi, sauerkraut, all these sour lemon juice are very good to stimulate the liver to open it up, to let the rising energy come out of the liver, which it works a lot during the winter because it processes all these more protein and fat that we need to keep ourselves warm. Eventually, you can put a sprinkle of soy sauce. Depends if you. And that's it. And then I will mix it with the pesto later. If you don't have a pesto, you can have just a lot of nice chopped parsley or coriander or a mix of everything, and then just put it on at the end and eat it like this. Herbs, usually, at least not now, but at the beginning when we started to study macrobiotic, there was not many herbs. Not because they are bad, but my teacher, which was Japanese, she always told me, we don't use more herbs because we don't know them. We have other things, other more lean food to balance, like the ginger, more garlic. And unless you are cooking specifically for a specific disease or for a person that needs a specific energy, and you want to avoid the extremes, the yin and the yang, then please use herbs in your food. Herbs are, they have a lot of properties, they have a lot of essential oil, and most of all, I feel that they help to move the energy in your body. They help to keep this rising energy that, especially now, it was still for too long. So Mediterranean herbs are, in my opinion, my experience, are quite good. So now our tempeh. A little bit of sunflower oil, cold pressed sunflower oil. This is quite a good non-stick pot, so I don't use so much oil. Let it warm up very well because we want to make it a nice and golden brown. Let's take it in the way. As I told you, to my mixture, as I wrote, I add also a little bit of water because I'm going to cook the tempeh a little bit. Tempeh is a fermented food. So I think if it's made well, if the beans are nice and are not too crunchy, you don't need to steam the tempeh before when you pan fry it. Just let it cook a little bit in its own liquid, in the liquid that you pour on top. Because if you cook tempeh too long, you destroy part or most of all of the alive enzymes. It's still a good thing to eat. It's not that you, without the enzyme it's not good anymore. It's still a good source of protein. But if you want these enzymes, this B12, not to be destroyed, I wouldn't cook it too long.
Because you get usually pasteurized tempeh in the shops, right?
I don't think so.
Yeah, you do. And that's why it's good to make your own. If you can't, then find somebody that
No,
does.
there is a lot of fresh people making fresh tempeh.
There is, yes. like me.
Can we have a request if you would do a class on making tempeh?
Or you have a request?
Yeah, you could, yeah.
Well, it's a bit early for that, but we'll talk about it afterwards.
Yeah, of course you can do.
Good, I like that. That was not a no.
It's not difficult. The problem is you have to have, he has to ferment for 18, 20 hours or more, and you need to have something that keeps the temperature for all this time.
Constant.
Constant. Can make a kind of box with a lamp to keep the temperature, or there are incubators which are even better.
I've used my clothes dryer to make natto.
And you see. So let's a bit more. Meanwhile, I blanch the vegetables. So meanwhile, we are waiting for that. We can blanch our vegetables. Not when you blanch, not a lot at the time, otherwise the water becomes cooler or less hot, and the vegetables soak in water too long. Just a little bit at the time. In the end, you will be quicker. And you don't have this soggy, this vegetable full of water. We need to close for 30 seconds. Now we turn our, I don't know why it doesn't want to, I have to do it more.
Golden brown.
When you don't want vegetables to burn, things to burn, they burn immediately. When you are waiting for them to get golden brown, they don't want to do. Just a little bit longer.
We have an expression, a watched pot never boils. So don't watch it.
Yes,
If you
yes, it's true. Yeah. Let's see if this is boiling.
Ken, there's also, I was going to say, Ken, there's also a request for a natto class, natto making
Oh,
class.
that's not maybe easier.
Oh, natto I was making in Italy. I don't make it here at the
Yeah,
moment.
but we can.
But yes, natto is very good.
Let's put the juice on top, turn down the flame. The lid, the nice little lid, and let it do for a few minutes. Meanwhile, I grate my ginger. I don't put the ginger inside because by boiling for a few minutes, it disperses this tangy, this spicy,
Pungency.
pungent flavor of the ginger goes a little bit lost. So I have this.
Is that a special grater you have there?
This is an old one, is a ceramic one, but I find the best for the ginger. For me, it's the best.
It's ceramic.
A ceramic, it never gets dull. And I have it since many years. And I find it a very good way. My mother used to have something in glass like this to grate the apples when I was a baby. She was grating the apples on something very similar to make baby food. My mother never liked to use mass machines, and she did a lot of things, almost everything by hand.
Right.
So you.
That looks very moist as well.
Yeah. In fact, this is a nice, good way to make your ginger juice. So peel the ginger or wash it, then grate the flesh, and then we squeeze out with our hands the juice on top of the tempeh the last few seconds.
Do you peel the ginger before grating?
Yeah, I just said peel the ginger.
Ah, yes, you said that.
So let's go back to our, meanwhile, we have to go back to our greens. They are very tender, so we don't need to blend them for a long time. But still, you know, they are not raw, they are cooked. And then if you like them crunchy, you do less. If you like them a little bit more tender, you do a little bit longer. But not overcooked, not too cooked. And then the other part. Sorry if I rush from one to the other, but I like to have the meal ready for the end, and I try to. But if you have questions, please. So let's turn our tempeh. It's nice to leave a little bit. Maybe I exaggerated with the sauce because I have a smaller amount of what I gave to you as a measurement. But I can teach you what to do if there is a little bit of sauce like this. So we put the ginger juice. So our ginger flesh, and then it's nice and fresh. It has a lot of juice. And then you can put more or less according to your taste. Ginger is nice and spicy, especially for people that like spice. It's a nice way to spice your food because also it's very spicy. It's on the contrary of the pepper it's very nice for the stomach. It calms the stomach. It's helping your digestion. If you have stomach pain, if you have a very contracted stomach, a very nice ginger tea with a little bit of rice malt is really immediately making it relaxing. So ginger is good, gives you this spicy taste, but it's gentle on your stomach. So this is it. What you can do, you can boil a little bit longer for the juice, or if you have a lot of juice, you can take a little bit of foods or arrowroot and lightly pick it up so that you have like a glaze on your tempeh. Like this.
That sounds good, a glaze.
Yeah. Now we have our the second. I made the very easy the pesto, which I made with parsley, but you can be many other a mixture of other greens. So I have the roasted nuts. Little bit grind the nuts first. You can do also in hand mix, then add your greens.
What greens are those?
This is parsley. I have in the garden some fresh mint. So I add it to it. Then we do a little bit of olive oil. Then a little bit of lemon juice, without exaggerating, too sour is not good on that. And eventually a little bit of water. I still have some blanching water from the peas, so I can use it.
Very nice.
You can use also garlic. I don't use garlic because I'm intolerant to it. Of course, I use when I cook for people, but if I have to taste, or if I have to eat it, like tonight, it's not for, I cook for you, but we have to eat it at home, then I don't use the garlic.
Angela, what went in the blender first?
The nuts. First, the nuts, it's better to grind the nuts before, so that it's easy then to make the pesto. If you put them everything together, you have to blend the greens too long. If the liquid is not enough, you can add a little bit more of water. Obviously, you have to add now a pinch of salt, a little more olive oil, and I put all the salt.
It's looking good. I'm starting to build up an appetite. It's hard work, this cameraman business.
What kind of nuts were those, Ken?
Almonds.
Okay.
I had to take out the greens, you know why? You know why it was off.
Greens out. How are we doing for time, Gina?
Yes, it's okay.
Yeah,
have
we got 4 minutes.
Yeah,
You can
okay.
go over. No problem.
Okay, I can put together the meal. Sorry. A small amount for this kind of blender. 4 minutes only.
No, 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 you can take more.
Oh,
Let's take 5.
Ken, you're generous.
Yes.
Take 4 plus 5 is
a
9.
pesto doesn't have to completely smooth and has to be a little bit more liquid because otherwise it's making our barley just very sticky. So, okay, we have everything. Now we put it together again. Right.
It's all very green.
What is tasty, that is the salt is right, because we don't want people to add salt at the table. So it's better to have your meals tasty without overdoing the salt, but not enough. Otherwise, there is no way people are going to add the salt at the table, and we don't want that, because the salt is better when it's cooked with your food. Our bodies absorb it better. Okay.
Angela, were the almonds salty or
No, the almonds I wash them because and then I lightly roasted them. I like to wash my seeds and my nuts before I roast them. In fact, I want to show with the sesame seeds, which are washed, rinsed, and then make it pan nice and hot. Shall I play the meal then?
Yes, I think you
So
should.
we can show also those.
Oh yeah, here we have the radishes.
So water starts to come. Of course, it's not a long time, but it's still
Like pickles.
like pickles. So we just squeeze them a little bit.
Yeah.
were you pressing them? No, you didn't press them.
Yeah, I press them with the plate.
Oh, you did.
The
Yeah.
plate and the weight.
Obviously, if I
That
had
was the weight.
maybe my plate was a little bit too big. It's better when the plate or is smaller than the bowl. This was just right. Then the weight it goes more on presses more on the vegetables.
But they're looking really cute, those little radishes. And they're going to be devoured soon. So thank you, radishes.
I'll be right there.
Okay. These
Oh, the greens are really vibrant.
are our radishes, which is not very. And now we make. Before I do the sesame seeds, I like to make the tahini sauce, which is more important. So this is a very nice alkalizing sauce. Instead of using oil, of course, I use tahini. Then a little bit of umeboshi paste. If you don't have the umeboshi paste, just use a little bit more soy sauce and that's it, and lemon juice. Then we have some soy sauce. I gave the amount, so.
Yeah, the amounts are in the recipe.
And this is a little bit less than what I brought, so that's why I'm using less. And then some lemon juice. Again, this sour repeats in the food, stimulating the liver. And then water, enough water to make a nice creamy sauce. And now again, no, it's just a second. in the end, it's always a little bit messy because I'm trying to do everything at once. You can add also to this sauce a little piece of raw onion, and then it's making even
More savory.
tangy, and also it's helping really the digestion of the. You can put on your blanched vegetables, so you can put also on your grain. So then, according to what you want to do, you can add a little bit more water. Or these are small amounts. And small amounts is always a little bit more difficult, but. Okay. Perfect. We have our sauce. And now the meat is ready. We just do, we can, Gina, do you want me to plate it or is okay like this? And I can put it in frame?
No, Angela, it's beautiful as it is. No need to plate, I think.
You can just, anyway, the meal is ready. I can just roast this. Meanwhile, people are asking me something.
Yeah.
So very hot the pan. These are rinsed. When you have wet seeds or nuts, it's easier to roast them because meanwhile the heat is evaporating the water around them, is also penetrating, so they roast more evenly and the oil doesn't come out immediately and burn, because very easy when you put a nut or a seed in a hot pot, that it becomes, the oil comes out and it burns, and this is not very digestible and it's not even very nice. So better to take a little bit more time, but to do it right. High flame until they start to pop, and then low flame until they are roasted as much as we want. So this was it. This is the way I cook it home. Obviously, not I don't make such a mess when I cook. What God can. This is the way I cook at home. This is the way I think to balance my out about yin and yang when I make my meals. As I told you, maybe years of experience is making it easier, but just go with your intuition, your observation, and be in harmony with the nature, and things will come quite easily. We tend to think a lot, and this is not always the right way. It's not the wrong one, but it's not always the right one.
So where can you find all these recipes, Angela?
I mean, part of those, not exactly all those. I wrote a book 2 years ago. It's more for beginners or for people that like to have some nice food for everyday cooking, everyday meal. And it's quite straightforward, it's quite clear, full of nice, I made a picture of all the food that I made without tricking it, so that people know that this is the way it should come out. It's not.
This is the way it does come out.
Yes.
Yes.
I had most of the people that got this book, they say they can follow the recipe easily and things are coming out exactly, because I hate when you have a recipe and it's not precise, and people they don't have experience, in the end they have totally another result, and this is quite frustrating. So I really, by teaching since so many years, I kind of knew how to talk to the people, what the people needed to know. Sometimes it looked even too much explanation, but I think people need it when they are at the beginning of their experience with a new kind of food. You see, it's popping. I don't know if I'm sorry about my pronunciation. I know this is terrible. And then usually the seeds, when you can take between those fingers, not the right, and it's easy to crush, then it's ready.
Right.
This is for the sesame seeds, it's not for the nuts, because you can never crush a nut between your fingers. Okay. And this, after you mix the sauce, you put the sauce on your greens, you can mix it in, or you can just lightly put on top. And then you can, I just do a little bit, and then you can add some extra sesame seeds.
Mm.
And
That
the name of your cookbook.
The name of the cookbook is Cooking with Angela.
Unfortunately, Gina,
Delicious.
it's not online because it was published in Moldavia, which is not in the EU, and I wasn't able to put on Amazon. Maybe I didn't try it hard enough. So I send it to people. Of course, there are some places where they have it, and for example, in London, somewhere in Scotland, in Sweden, but basically it's not reachable from everybody. I still have to work on it and just take some time and try to see if I can put it online. Otherwise, people write to us and then we send it away.
If you do want to order a book, you can do that by sending me an email at my email address. My name is Kenneth Prange, and my email address is my name backwards, so it's prangekenneth@yahoo.co.uk. I can't hear you, Gina.
Yeah,
Wait.
Prange Kenneth, and then
At yahoo.co.
at yahoo.com.uk.
Not com, co, C-O.
Oh, sorry,
dot UK.
UK.
Yeah, so my last name, Prange, is spelled Prange.
She knows it.
Actually, you can,
She knows it.
yeah. Okay, good.
It's very nice for me to be here and to share.
Well,
a little bit
mutual.
about-
It's wonderful. I appreciate so much. You're so prepared and so clear in your presentation. It's really a pleasure. I really,
very
truly
much.
appreciate all your effort and your time. Thank you so
And,
very
I
much.
appreciate what you are doing for everybody in the world with the incredible forum that you have. I
thank
know
you.
There's a lot of thinking and work behind that.
Thank you so much. Well,
You're welcome.
it's all of us together. Thank you
Bye
very
to
much.
everybody.
Bye
Bye to everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Ken.
Bye.